from Douglas County?
That is correct.
Oh, good. And have you done a 4-H presentation here at Spring Horse Classic before?
I did a presentation last year at Spring Horse Classic. This is my first time doing public speaking.
All right. Well, good. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And it's good to try one of the other options in our communications
So I thought
project. Yeah, great. All right, so our doorman has shut the door. We shouldn't have any interruptions. Got a nice attentive audience. Anxious to hear what you're going to tell us about horse racing.
Oh, I'm just so excited. I'm headed to my very first Kentucky Derby. I'm all dressed up, I have my big beautiful hat, and I can't wait to see them blanket the winner with roses. Hi, I'm Hannah Sheely, and I'm an intermediate in Douglas County 4-H. For the next 10 minutes, I would like to bring you into the world of horse racing and share its long history, famous tracks and races, and introduce you to some of the top stars of horse racing. Horse racing has a rich history that dates clear back to 636 BC with the chariot and mounted races during the Roman Empire. From there, it spread from Central Asia to the Mediterranean and finally came to England in the mid-1500s. Many of the earliest races were among royalty between two horses for a private wager. These races became known as the Sport of Kings. It wasn't until the early 1700s that racing progressed into a professional sport in the UK. The Jockey Club was established to create complete rules and regulations for racing, and the group still acts today as the governing authority in England. In the mid-1800s, racing's popularity increased, and the first U.S. racetrack was built in Saratoga Springs, New York, marking the birth of the oldest stakes race in the United States, the Travers. By the end of the 19th century, the number of racetracks skyrocketed to 314, and the increased popularity of racehorse gambling followed. Unfortunately, that increased gambling brought with it an anti-gambling effort in the 1920s, which banned legalized betting, and horse racing was nearly wiped out. Slowly, bans were overturned in exchange for a share of the money that was wagered, and spectators started heading back to the tracks. At the end of World War I, a legendary racehorse, Man o' War, fueled a renewed interest in the sport. A surge in popularity in the 1970s was again spurred by the horse athlete. 3 horses, Secretariat, Seattle Slew, and Affirmed, all captured the Triple Crown. Another decline followed in the early 80s, but by the end of the decade, competitive racing had become one of the most widely attended sports in the United States, second only to baseball. It's the excitement of the racetrack and watching these 4-legged athletes that brings fans flooding to the tracks. These venues are amazing, and there are several races and racetracks that help define the sport of horse racing and its history. It all started at Saratoga Springs, New York, with the Travers. The first Travers Stakes race was run in 1864 and won by a horse named Kentucky. This race is currently run at 1 1/4 miles long, and the record speed at this distance is 2 minutes flat by General Assembled in 1979. The Travers Trophy is known as the Man o' War Cup, after the horse that won it in 1920. The next 3 very historical races make up the coveted Triple Crown. These 3 races are run on the same Saturdays every year and in the same order. This amazing feat that all horses and owners strive for begins on the first Saturday each May with the Kentucky Derby. Then is followed 2 weeks later by the Preakness Stakes and 3 weeks later by the Belmont Stakes. The Kentucky Derby is held in Louisville, Kentucky at Churchill Downs. It is one of the oldest thoroughbred races still run today and was founded by the grandson of William Clark of the Lewis and Clark Expedition. This race is run at 1 1/4 miles long and is known as the most exciting 2 minutes in sports. Ladies still come dressed to the hilt with large elaborate hats and sip their traditional mint julep. running again at the famous Preakness Stakes in Baltimore, Maryland at the Pimlico Racecourse. This race is a bit longer at 1 3/16 miles. And like the Kentucky Derby, the winner of the Preakness is also blanketed with flowers, but this time black-eyed Susans. Thus, the Preakness is also known as the Run for the Black-Eyed Susans. If a horse has had the stamina to win these first 2 races, then they only have 1 race left to seal up the Triple Crown, and only 3 weeks to rest up for it. The final leg to complete the Triple Crown is the Belmont Stakes, held at Belmont Park in Elmont, New York. This is the oldest and longest of the 3 Triple Crown races, run at 1.5 miles. Because of the race's length, it is known as the Test of Champions, and it too blankets its winner with flowers, this time carnations. I now want to take you over to the girls' turf in the Kentucky Oaks Stakes race, only for fillies. This race is held in Louisville, Kentucky at Churchill Downs and run at a distance of 1 1/8 miles. The Kentucky Oaks, the Black-Eyed Susan Stakes, and the Acorn Stakes are the counterparts to the Triple Crown races, held at the same 3 racetracks. Kentucky Oaks may soon be one of 3 races that make up the Filly Triple Crown, also known as the Triple Tiara of thoroughbred racing. Most sports have tournaments, and horse racing is no exception, which takes us to the Breeders' Cup. This is an annual series of 14 races created for a year-end championship in North America. It was founded in 1982 and was considered the richest day in sports when it was a 1-day event. The now 2-day event's combined purses in 2008 were $25.5 million. Like any sport, the athlete is the hero. There are some amazing athletes in the sport of horse racing. Some I think you will recognize from the movies, but the horse that tops the list is Man o' War. He is credited with rescuing American horse racing, and in 1919 he won 3 stakes races in just 17 days and lost just 1 race his entire career. He also sired future racer War Admiral, and one of his offspring sired the famous Seabiscuit. Seabiscuit won 11 of 15 races in 1936, and then furthered his popularity with his 1939 victory over War Admiral, known as the Match of the Century. Finally, his story was featured in a major motion picture in 2003, which I am sure many of you are familiar with. That brings us to another very well-known horse who has also had a film recently come out. That's right, Secretariat. At his start, he was considered to be too pretty to be a good racehorse, but had 8 victories in his 1972 season as a 2-year-old. He was the first of only 2 2-year-olds to be crowned Horse of the Year, and he followed this up with taking the coveted Triple Crown and winning the Belmont Stakes by a record-breaking 31 lengths. He still holds the speed record at all 3 of the Triple Crown racetracks, and he is one of only 3 non-human athletes to be ranked on ESPN's 100 Greatest Athletes of the 20th Century. Horse racing has an incredible history that spans clear back to the Roman Empire. Its development as a sport, the racetracks that were built, its historic races, and the equine athletes that make it all happen, all contribute to a great day at the races. Oh, what a great race. I just had so much fun. I'll definitely have to be sure to watch the other Triple Crown races and see how they turn out. My resources were animaldiscovery.com and allhorseracing.com. Thank you for your time today. Are there any questions?